Am I the asshole for using the word consent against my mother? I, 14F, have wavy, frizzy hair that's always been a pain to maintain whenever it's short. Let's say above my shoulders. About 2 years ago now was when my hair was at its longest and it was easier to maintain. I got it cut because my mom, 44, didn't want me to have longer hair. Being 12 at the time, I didn't care so much and got it done. I was on vacation when this happened. Fast forward to around September 2024 after me and my sister, 9, had just gotten haircuts, and I think it's safe to say that we are both responsible when it comes to asking for the appropriate haircuts. However, we noticed that our hairdresser had cut our hair shorter than requested. This was the second time that had happened, and I asked my mom if she could ask the hairdresser to not cut off as much hair because both my sister and I didn't want to come off as rude. That's when she admits that she tells the hairdresser to cut our hair shorter on purpose because she likes our short hair. My sister and I were both livid, and I told her that we were both old enough to ask for a simple trim. Since then my mom has offered to play my hair after I wash it, and I have politely declined the offer, yet she keeps asking me in particular if she could brush my hair, and I still say no. But she is still asking, and at this point I'm getting really sick of her requests despite me saying no, so the next time she asked me about her brushing my hair I say, no, I don't consent to that. My mom gets upset that I used that kind of language against her. I told her that I was only using strong language because she wasn't listening to me at first, and I said that I have to say what I really mean, but she still gets mad at me. Am I the asshole? Your body, your hair, your right to withhold consent to be touched in any way that you don't welcome. Perhaps if your mother hadn't gone behind your back and given your hairdresser instructions that contradicted your stated wishes, you'd be less sensitive in this area. But as it stands, your sensitivity and strong, assertive language are completely justified. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. Consent isn't strong language, it's just accurate. Your hair is a part of you, you get to say no, and you get to respond when it feels like she's trying to wear you down. Actions have consequences. When we betray trust, we have to work to rebuild it. We can't just demand it back. Not the asshole. Anyone who gets like this about the word consent is the asshole because it usually means they don't want to hear no and want full control. You're 14 and entitled to autonomy over your own body, as anyone is at any age of their life. LMFAO, your mom only thinks it's strong language because she wants to push your boundaries and still sees you as an extension of herself rather than your own person. Not the asshole. Keep defending yourself, and if your mom doubles down or pushes harder then you'll know you can't trust her. Not the asshole. Use the term boundaries, too. Don't brush curly hair. Am I the asshole for refusing to babysit my niece at the last minute? I work full-time and recently started taking evening classes to finish my degree. My schedule is packed, and I rely on my evenings to study or attend classes. My sister Emily has a 4-year-old daughter named Lila. I love my niece and I've babysat her many times when she asks in advance. Last week Emily called me about an hour before my class to ask if I could watch Lila for a few hours. She said she and her husband both had work emergencies. I told her I had an important class that evening which included a review session for an upcoming exam. I apologized but said I couldn't miss it and she would need to figure something else out. Emily ended up calling our mom, who was able to go over and watch Lila. Now she is upset with me and says I was selfish for not helping when she really needed it. She said she would not have asked unless it was a real emergency. My mom also mentioned that I could have made it work since Emily has a lot on her plate with her job and being a mom. I feel bad for saying no, but I also feel like I had a valid reason. Am I the asshole to stick to my plans instead of helping her? Not the asshole. You had plans already, you have your own life that doesn't stop just because Emily needs a last-minute sitter. Besides, she obviously had at least one other person she could ask. Also, she and her husband both had work emergencies at the same time? Do they work together or something? And how big of a work emergency are we talking? Because I can understand dropping everything if a loved one was being rushed to the hospital or something. But if it's a work emergency like a client will pull out of the deal unless you meet with them ASAP, then no, I'm not skipping a class for that. Not the asshole. Know who else has a lot on their plate? You. You have a lot. You are working full-time and taking classes to boot. This is finals time. You have to prioritize staying on top of work, studying, and your own health so you can get through the next few weeks. Not the asshole. Gimme a break. So she decided to have a child and now anyone who doesn't drop their own life to help her is a bad person. You know what? You want to have a child, make sure you can manage that in your life and you can afford to be out of work to care for them, or afford daycare. The end. Nobody else is responsible for your child. Not the asshole. I understand it was an emergency, but you have important plans that night. Your education is and should be your priority. I find it very suspect that she and her hubby both had work emergencies at the exact same time. They probably wanted an impromptu date night and thought she could guilt you into babysitting. Stand your ground and make sure you are always your first priority. Not the asshole. Why was your education supposed to take a back seat to her and her child? You and your schedule are important too. It is not your responsibility to figure out childcare for her child. You babysit when you can, so it's not like you never help her. She's being ungrateful and entitled. The petty part of me wants you to tell her that since you're so selfish, you won't be helping at all anymore. But if she's not usually like this, that's probably too far. Am I the asshole for telling my baby sister not to introduce her boyfriend to my 4-year-old? So a few months ago, my baby sister, whom is 25 years old, asked if she could take my daughter for the weekend. I agreed and dropped her off at my mom's apartment where she lives. I had recently found out she started dating a guy, and before I left I asked what she had planned. It was a week before Halloween, so she stated she would take my daughter to get a costume and then they would hang out at the park and get lunch with my mom. These were normal things for them, so I said okay, cool. Then she proceeded to ask me what time I was picking her up the following day. Normally she wouldn't ask. I asked her if she needed me to pick her by a certain time and she said no. She said she had plans but my daughter could be included. Now something in me said, if you are planning an outing with your boyfriend, please leave my daughter with mom. She then goes, well, mom is coming with us because he invited us to dinner. So I said okay, I'll swing by early in the day to get her. Please don't have my daughter around people that I do not know or introduce her to your boyfriend whom I haven't met yet, and she seemed a little bothered by it. I explained why I felt the way I did and she agreed not to, but she didn't respect my boundaries or wishes. Edit. The same night I asked her not to introduce my kid to her boyfriend. She had him over for a few hours and it was never mentioned to me. I found out because my kid slipped up and told me he got her flowers and she thought she was in trouble for telling me. I had to ask them. I asked my mom first and she said oh yeah, he came over and was here for a few. She didn't understand what the issue was and I explained it's for safety reasons. I asked my sister and she still won't have a conversation about with me. So yay. Attempts to establish boundary regarding child, sister. Well, obviously this doesn't apply to me. Op. This is. Whose kid? Your mom's? Your sister's? No. It's yours. Your rules, your child. At the end of the day, that's what this boils down to. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. You were willing to accommodate whatever time frame was needed to keep your child from being introduced to the boyfriend. While I don't personally see harm in the boyfriend briefly meeting your daughter, it's still your choice, period. Especially if you're flexible enough to work around our plans. Your use of baby sister in the title took me on an interesting journey. Edited to change verdict based on update, not the asshole. Introducing him against your wishes is bad enough. Seemingly having told your daughter to keep it a secret is unforgivable. Original verdict. NaH for your actual question. Based on my understanding that she agreed not to introduce your child to her boyfriend. I'm missing any indication you'd told her not to do this before and she planned to go against that, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Everyone sucks here. She should respect your boundaries, but you're being ridiculous. Either you trust your mom and sister to take good care of your kid or you don't. Would you be pissed if your mom ran into a friend at the store and introduced your daughter? Would you be mad if your daughter played with a strange child at the park and interacted with that kid's parents? Preschool? What are you going to do at kinder next year? Forbid her from talking to the lunch ladies and the gym coach until you've met them? Unless you have reason to be suspicious of this dude or reason to think your sister is leaving your daughter alone with him. You need to wake up and realize that you don't get to control every single person your kid interacts with unless you are the person with your kid 24/7. Not the asshole. Your sister doesn't get to dictate who is in your child's life. Introducing her to him at this smaller event is not up to her. It would be different if it were some large social event. While bringing the boyfriend around against your wishes is a big deal, telling your daughter not to tell you is the bigger issue. Teaching your daughter to lie to you is definitely not cool. Either one of these things alone is enough to never trust your sister or mother with your daughter again. They obviously have no respect for you, and will disregard any boundaries you set. They will do whatever they please and then just tell your daughter to lie to you about it. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay my brother back for things that he said I could have? To cut a very, very long story short, I was raised by my grandma, and believed she was my mother until I was 11, until I was 13 when social services got involved and felt she could no longer care for me properly and I was going to be placed with a foster family. My older brother, who's actually my uncle, had already moved out, gave me a few things before I left. These things were a PS2, a few games, an old electric guitar and amp, 2 pairs of jeans and a hoodie. My foster parents already owned an Xbox 360 and I also found a PS2 Slim and some more games by an elderly neighbor when I helped him clear out his attic and he said I could keep them, So I never really used the PS2 my brother gave me, and the first Christmas I was with my foster parents they bought me a new electric guitar and amp. Once I hit 14 my boobs went from an A cup to a DD in a year, so the hoodie didn't fit anymore, and when I was 15 my hips and ass came in too, so the jeans no longer fit either. My brother's stuff all got stored in the garage, but unfortunately they all got ruined during the flood. My foster parents showed me what a loving, caring family was really like and ended up adopting me when I was 16, and I now consider them my parents and I love them very much. However, a couple of years ago I decided I wanted to try to reconnect with my grandma, and we've now developed a more normal relationship, and she seemed genuinely remorseful over what happened and her lack of contact over the years. But I hadn't seen my brother until recently when he showed up whilst I was visiting. Initially it was really nice and we talked about how the past few years had been for the both of us, and I was happy until he said, "So can I have my stuff back now?" I asked what he meant and he said, "You know the stuff I gave you when you left? The PS2, the games, the clothes, my guitar." I replied with, "Oh them, well you said I could have them, not borrow them, so I considered them to be gifts." He said, "Look, I only gave them to you because I felt sorry for you. Just give them back." I explained that everything had gotten damaged. He said, "Typical. You know, if you weren't such a fuck up you wouldn't have had to be put into care anyway. You can pay me back for all that stuff. That's like £600 you owe me." I laughed in his face and said, "No way am I paying you that much. If you really want the PS2 back that badly, I have a slim version you can have. Even though I'd like to keep it. Even though they were definitely gifts. But I'm not paying you a damn penny." He called me a fucking bitch and an asshole and then stormed out. My grandma said, "Don't worry about him. I'll make sure he won't be around you again." After he stormed out, I only work as a barista, and with the cost of living crisis I barely have enough money to pay for Christmas presents for everyone this year. £600 is literally unattainable for me, but I'm wondering, am I the asshole? He never said he expected them back, but he never explicitly said they were gifts, only that I could have them. Not the asshole. Don't let that man push you around. Not the asshole. Sounds like he's hard up for money and is trying to take advantage of your now good situation. You were a child. You were never a fuck up, and the fact that this grown adult would resort to insulting you to try to extort you for money sort of explains why you didn't get to know a loving family until you met your current parents. Maintain your relationship to your grandmother, but ensure he's never around when you visit. He's not a safe man for you to be around. Not the asshole. So, items were given to you when you were 13, outgrew or damaged by age 16. I am assuming you are older now, and brother expected you to give items back. Then when you state you do not have them, he wants money. Which I think were his intentions all along. He is shady for not only trying to extort from you, but to do so at a higher cost than they would now be worth. I say you continue to tell him to go pound bricks. He said, "Look, I only gave them to you because I felt sorry for you. Just give them back." So, you admit it was a gift then? Your uncle sounds like a real jerk. You would think he would be happy to hear from you after all that time. Sad that he only wants to take advantage. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. Your parents aren't running a storage business. You're not responsible for his stuff. Blaming you for your guardian's inability to properly care for you is absolutely nuts. You don't need a brother like this. He gave them. Even if he hadn't, he's waited too long to ask for them back. Not the asshole for telling him nope.